Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 7th South-South Forum on Sustainability. Today, we will have 4 e-lectures. The first speaker will be Eka Swadiansa. And Eka is the principal architect of Office of Strategic Architecture, OSA, and founding member of Global University for Sustainability. His practice and research interests ranging from urban regional planning, design for the South-South better mega cities, to the Occidental studies of modern, postmodern architecture, anti-Eurocentric reinterpretation of Global South vernacular and architecture and post-capital globalization. And today, his lecture title will be Globalization and its Paradox, the mapping of COVID-19 global transmission. Eka, please.
Thank you very much, Margaret, for the kind introduction. So, yeah, of course, I would congratulate first to all the organizing committees for this wonderful SSFS 7. I didn't realize it until the day it came, because it became so big, the SSFS. It's really great to see many people, even though we cannot. I would prefer to go to Hong Kong and meet you guys, but we have to make some adaptation. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about the globalization and its paradox. So basically, this is more on the regional planning, but it's actually a very diverse level of regional plannings. And then I would like to start with this. This is the situation report that was published 2 days ago. That today we are already in the 13 million cases globally, and more than 550,000 fatalities globally. So in a way, actually, even up to nowadays, there are not many people. There are some people that do not aware of the lethality of this COVID-19, and partly I will talk about why is that happening, and making some connection with the previous sessions on SSFS, because I think that's the idea of we having SSFS, is that we're not going to stop here on the event, but we might continue this snowball effect of these discussions. So this is my abstract. So I will focus on the highlighted. So the media are portraying narrations with very limited analysis, which might be interpreted even in contrast to each other. So it's quite disturbing in my opinion, when you have like the same data can be interpreted in different ways, which is even in contrast to each other. Now, numerous previous SFS speakers since day 1 to now day 9 had proven that COVID-19 crisis had been utilized to encapsulate some political and economical agendas by both ruling parties or opposing powers. So we're not talking about sides, we're not taking any sides. Using convincing infographics used to provide pseudo-scientific grounds. I would say pseudo because in some grounds they are actually hiding some quote-unquote realities, which not necessarily be providing the wrong information, but portraying one-sided perception and misleading conclusion as if it's like driven that way. I will give some examples, plenty examples. So then these e-lectures will emphasize on three different things. The first is about the data discourses and the related to the media, and then with the pandemic waves. And then the second is the pandemic transmissions and the rethinking of globalization. And last but not least is about the alpha cities paradoxes. Okay, so the data discourses. This is a common things that happen not only in Indonesia, but probably also in many countries. I've received this kind of message throughout South Asia Pacific, at least through my friends and my networks, which is quite popular. So, for instance, This worldometer very popular in Indonesia and also in Southeast Asia, using a WhatsApp group, and some parties send this WhatsApp image of this, with the narration of saying that, oh my God, Indonesia is actually on the highest list of COVID-19 in Southeast Asia. I will go down to there when and then they highlight the countries in Southeast Asia. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to start at the very basic, just to get a hang of it. So this is the worldometer website, and this is the total case that become the base of the chart. So again, when we're talking about the paradox in the media and also in the WhatsApp group, and this had something to do with the rise of right-wing movement and so on and so forth. We have been discussing this in the past 8 days. So actually there's nothing wrong with the website. The website actually provides many different kind of things, but especially in Android platform, they just show like half of it. And then if you see, we can actually get many other numbers, which if we shift from total cases to say cases per X people, you will get a different kind of set of data, different ranks. This is the same data we're talking about, but it's showing a different kind of countries in the rank. And there's nothing wrong with the data. It just depends on which part we are sorting the data on. So it's just like we're talking about the GDP and GDP per capita. It's two different things. So, but again, when we're talking about propaganda and we're talking about the common majority, they don't care about these kind of things. So that's the first point, that we're talking about the basic volume, and the other one is the per capita. Another example. This is the basic foundation of data. This is the one that became the foundation of analysis, especially that's used by intergovernmental bodies like WHO. So basically, it's total and new accumulation and on that date and cases and death. So this is the ranks that happened just 2 days ago. And then this is the other kind of set of data that usually media improvises on: recovery, activity, and fatality, which fatality usually regarded as recovery minus the active case or the cases, which is actually this data is not reliable at all. Why? Because when we're talking about the recovery rate and activity rate, there's a high chance that the COVID-19 is actually undetectable. No physical symptoms. So when you make a percentage of a recovery based on cases, the data becomes unusable, because the base data of percentage, which is the cases, is actually untraceable. So the whole thing, the idea of the recovery and active case becomes also unusable. The more usable data would be something like, for instance, per 1 million population of cases, death, and tests. Like for instance, this one. So this is the highest testing by per million population countries around the world. So in a sense that these countries are becoming more reliable, or the most reliable around the world, are of the 200 plus countries listed in WHO. So what does this mean? This means that actually, when we're talking about the most reliable comparative, is total death, because that's the end point. We're not talking about cases, we're not talking about transmission, but we're talking about the end means of casualties. And which is, we're talking, and then in the per capita ways, which is the per million population. So we're not talking the whole bunch, but we're talking about a ratio with the base population of each country. So most reliable comparative data for comparative studies would be the total death per million or a new death per million. However, since different countries having different test subjects, different number of test subjects, this data is almost impossible to build. Uh, and then we have a problem when we are doing a reliable trend or forecast studies. Uh, so when we have to adapt with this condition, the most usable data would be the total death, which is for valuation, or new death for evaluation. But when we're talking about reliable trend and forecast, we have to use a different kind of data, and then I will go there. So now I'm going to very fast. This is another example of the very popular one. It's called the ncoronavirus.org. And then I will stop with this. Actually, they have many different kind of things in this website, but most of the time, the media only portrays this one, especially social media, which is it's oversimplification of data set. We're talking about just using like infographics, and basically this is just a graph, a color symbol when they provide the green, yellow, and red. So it's a kind of hermeneutical basis of image. Now, I'll give some examples. For instance, what's the basic for China to be a Yale when they already passed the whole amount of mounted of the new cases? And then there are also the other kind of examples, but this is the first example. And then the second example, the US. This is obviously obvious because it's going up and climbing up. Or Indonesia. This is also obvious. However, there are some basic questions of data analysis that we need to ask. First, there is no Y factors in this chart. And then second, why did it start from 21st of February? It has some, we will go elaborate this further. So for instance, this is the samples of the chart. As you can see, none of the charts showing any Y factors volume. So that's the first problem. And then hence we are using a more reliable data based on WHO. Of course, they also have some problems in especially in the administration of the data. Some of the data are mixed match in the different days and so on and so forth. But again, we are not trying to find the whole complete truth of what's really happened, but we are trying to build a model for it to understand the whole thing. Not in a sense to the health kind of medicine kind of field of studies, but it's more on the regional planning field of studies. So we need to use a kind of the same base of data source to provide reliable comparative studies when we are comparing one data to the other. So this is the data, usually example of the data given by the WHO. Now this is the data set. So the whole data set. Actually, we are using based on. So this is the dates, the month, and so on and so forth, going from here to there. So actually, the first outbreak defined by WHO is it's on the 20th of January, while that data was started on February. So it's just so and then the pandemic case was stated on this red one on the 11th of March. I will go quite fast with this. So and then we have a base data on 5 days, every 5 days. This is the yellow one, and the green one is every 25 days. Now, for the first set of data, we are going to use only the first 100. This is the pandemic waves is the last day 0 to 125. So the last 125 days, because we're going to talk about the waves globally. So we start with day 0 and end day 125, which is just 2 days ago. So this is brand new data. If you can see from this, if we take some points from 25 margin, 0, 25 days and 50 days, 75 days, in regards to the first pandemic, you can see that the ranks are vary from one to the other, 1 to 10, the rank of total death. Now, these three countries only appear once in the rank, so I'm going to exclude it in the building of the data. This country, Peru, is also only once, but only appear once, but they appear like at the end of the chart, so we need to include that. Now, the next one is the samples of the different kind of data. This is the logarithmic data. So in regards of the difference between logarithmic data versus the linear data. So logarithmic data usually used in most of the media in North in developed countries. As you can see, it shows as if the whole country is more closer to each other. This one is taken from The Guardian with data set provided by the John Hopkins. So this is the example. So now the problem with logarithmic chart is that it doesn't show a linear y-axis. As you can see, it's a multiply. So it's a 0, 100, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000. So it's not a linear logarithmic. That's why it shows this kind of data. While usually, on the other hand, in the South-South media, usually they use the linear data because this is the opposing data in the South-South, and this one is the pro data in the North-North. So you can actually, but scientifically it's used of different purposes, but for propaganda, they use it for which means they need to be. And then the other one is that this one is days since 50th case in each of the respective countries, while our data is taken the whole globally using the same kind of chronometer, the same date. So this is the other different things. So, however, actually the logarithmic graphic is very reliable to portray trend, but not to use as a valuation based or evaluation based when we're talking about the comparative studies, but for trend and forecast. So different use. Now I will talk more about that. So for example, this is the log of the logarithmic of largest region in region. So we have this one is USA, and then and this one is the UK, and this one is India. This is actually exactly the same set of data. One is linear, the other one is log. As you can see, in linear, the difference between USA and UK is in such wide gap, while this one is only this gap. This is because the fact that they are using this kind of logarithmic multiplying y-axis, but this is actually the same data set. For instance, the next one is this one is we focusing on the AMRO, the American Regional Office of WHO, and then, for instance, when we use this to differentiate what happened in US and the Brazil and Mexico and Peru, we can see the exact valuation. So this is the exact valuation because this is a linear scale. On the other hand, when we're talking about Europe, the first data that would provided in major media will be like this, as if it's comparable to each other, but actually they're not. Because when we want to do it comparatively, we need to use the same scale. This one is at the maximum scale 140,000. This one is only 50,000. So if we convert this to 140,000, it becomes like this. It's way different than this one. So that's the other way of manipulating that propaganda of the use of data. The data is not lying. It's the right data. It's just the way that they portray it can be bind to different purposes. And then this is for the rest of the world, the Southeast Asia. It's led by India, and then the Eastern Mediterranean, which is the Middle East, led by Iran, and West Pacific led by China. So This is on 140 linear scale maximum, and this is a 225,000 death maximum on a linear scale. So, and then if we compare the linear and the logarithm, as you can see, they are portraying almost the same one on the right hand side. But on the left hand side, they're showing the exact value. But this one is, again, we're talking about the forecast. We're heading through the same kind of fate. So this is the euro. As you can see on this log, the height of the data, the height of the graph is not too different, but well, this one is makes a big difference. And then this one is even the rest of the world. Now, the conclusion is that actually, when we're talking about data, it really depends on which part of ends, which part of means that we are looking for. If we're talking about evaluation, then we should avoid the log data. But if we are trying to build a case for say forecast or something like that, then we should avoid the linear data. Now the next one is that when we put all together and we took only say five countries of the max, it will show this is the new death. So before, this is the total death. Now is the new death. If you can see, the whole thing is actually interlocking to each other. And we've put on together. So actually the problem with COVID is that the world will not be able to be freed of COVID unless everybody is freed of COVID. Now the problem is that as the countries are rising up and then slowing down and then second wave coming up, we are actually witnessing waves that are going, one after the other, which is in the global scale. No one really knows when this can be stopped. So this is the main problem of the COVID, and this data can only be portrayed using the new death on a linear scale. So now the next question is that how did actually it all began, the whole thing? I'm going back to this data set, but now we are going to use a different kind of data set. We're going to use the pandemic transmission from day -50 to +70, which is the very beginning. Why? Because now we're not portraying how the death rate goes until today, but we're going to portray transmission, how actually the virus spread throughout the world, which is stopped until, say, we're talking about 80% of the global countries. Okay, we're going to go very fast in this. This is actually how it progresses. If you can see, actually, the virus is jumping from one region to the other. And then once in one region, and then they're going to infect its neighbors. So like this, UEA, and then Egypt, and then it starts from there, and then the others. Same thing goes with this one, Brazil, and then the others. So it's, in a sense, they are kind of a super spreader that happens throughout the world, which is just in a handful countries of super spreaders. Now, for instance, we're going to go a little deeper than that. Europe, China, USA, India. This map is actually on the same scale, and this represents the line represents the different time zones. But this is continental. This is continental. This one archipelago. Now let's begin with Europe. As you can see, one super spreader, and then the rest. Now, actually, the data only focus on just a handful of countries in Europe, 9 countries, not more than that, as a secondary super spreader, until it becomes like this. So in a way, when we said Spain becomes very dark, France becomes very dark, Italy becomes very dark, because they are actually that's when the virus started in Europe. So that's how the whole thing building up. because the case in Europe's building up from there. Now, if we go to China, it's almost the same. Start with Wuhan. But the thing is that in China, the virus become very quickly contained. So it's not spreading the spreading becomes very predictable, because it's only have one locus, one focus, and then it's spreading away, because of very quick measures and in a very high efficient scale of measures and so on and so forth. Now, but however, if you can see at the very beginning days of the transmission, say the very beginning, is -51, the first outbreak, as you can see, actually the focus of the transmission happened on municipality, on cities only. See, this one is a municipal, and then in the cities, and then it shifted after entering the day 39, -39, it shifted to the ring from Hubei province, which the Hubei province, and then going wider from ring 1 to ring 2 to the rest of China. And then at the end, before China managed to conquer the virus, actually it's just between Hubei and the rest of the China. You can see the percentage it's very different, a very wide ratio until it becomes like this. The case is very much different to what happened in USA actually, because in USA, at first it's like as if there's no really centers of the virus, and then it become evidential that the centers is not spreading linearly, but exponentially, but only in a very specific states. See? Now, this indicates that this happened this way because there was no evidence, there's no proof of efficient lockdowns and so on and so forth, which is in US and China is more or less the same area and the same continental size. So this is the different measures will imply and resulted in a very different aftermath and very different result in the days to come. Speed becomes very urgent. So for instance, and then if we can see here, so actually the major chunk is just happening in New York and in New Jersey. And then with the rest is actually happening as a local transmission because of the summer holiday. And so we have Miami and California on the Florida on the Florida on the East Coast and California on the West Coast. But however, the biggest chunk still we're talking about, see this one, New York and New Jersey. Indonesia is quite different since it is archipelago geographically. So actually pretty much the virus contained is just in Java with some very small exceptions. This is supposed to be new capital, and this is a very specific case. There was a very specific case on that, but mostly they are centered in Java. And Java is mostly centered in Jakarta, but this is because the data is just stopped in day plus 75, so it's like 50 days ago, 50 or 75 days ago. Now East Java is becoming very dark too. But anyway, we are trying to portray the transmission logic, not the exact numbers. So as you can see, the transmission actually started in Jakarta and happening with this much chunks of the whole country. Now, if we move to Java, it's still the same thing. The Java here, it portrays mostly on Jakarta. So we're talking about urban centers. Now, in regards to urban centers, now what if we rearrange the whole data and we talk specifically on urban centers? We're talking about the cities. This is the final China case if we use the ring data set. And so as you can see, the circle which is this one, are portraying the cities, while no circle means the province. As you can see, the heart of the coronavirus happened not really on a urban province, urban kind of province, not municipality, because municipality in China, most of them are on the coastal area, and they're not as dark as UV. So in China's case, it's not happen. It has nothing to do with the urban centers. However, if we're talking about the U.S. case, it's all actually focused in the urban center. And in a way, it's actually mimicking the urban agglomeration, the mega agglomeration that happened in the US. Especially we're talking about the Northeast, so this one, the Northeast, the very dark one, and then the Great Lakes, Chicago, and so on and so forth. And then we have the Florida, and then the California, northern and south. So in a way, actually the data is making a perfect match with the urban centers data. In Indonesia, same thing. It's focused in Java, and in Java it focused in Jakarta, while Jakarta has this many sub-cities, which includes in the highest population in Indonesia, while the rest is just not so many. So basically, the failed lockdown will foster an urban pandemic. So this is the other data. So you can see, this is the urban pandemic ratio, and this is the real urban population ratio. This is China, US, and Indonesia. As you can see, only China that doesn't follow the same ratio. The rest follow the same ratio. See, New York and New Jersey has almost 50% out of the whole US of casualties, while in the urban ratio, it's also actually is not even 25%, maybe about 20%. Jakarta is also 50% out of the whole Indonesia on day 75, while it's actually in the urban is also only a little bit more than 25%. So this is showing the failure of urban lockdowns. And which is actually encapsulating the problems. Why? Because actually when we talk about the whole world, the city centers is not that much out of the whole geography of the world. And so hence the failed lockdown, urban pandemic will cause the global pandemic by means of air travel, because that's how the cities are connected. Now, this leads us to the next thing, which is we need to rethink about the globalization. So I'm going now to try to show a connection with what happened with the main forum, with SSFS7, especially to the main forum. We have been discussing a lot about this. So first, there's this discussion about the end of globalization in the first two sessions of the main forum. And then how did the globalization operated through goods distribution and interlinked chains of supply and production. And then, of course, this whole thing only happened through the modernist way of life, which engineered demand and consumption. Now, however, through the discussion, we learned that the pandemic actually transmitted through passengers' flights. The discussion that we have done previously, which is actually portraying a labor distribution. So what happened is that the distributed means is not only happening to the supply of production or demand of consumption, but also to the labor, or which is in a way, it's like a global reserve army, which is the basic theory is global reserve army of unemployment, but this is rather more a global reserve army of employment instead of unemployment, but in a global scale. And this is causing much problem through the pandemic transmission. Now we will go to that. How can this be a problem? Now the next chart, the different color represent a different region of the world. So the red one is the Western Pacific and Southeast Asia. Green is Europe. This one is blue is the North and Central America. So the Americas, and this one is the Middle East, Africa, and South America. This is North and Central America. Now, if you can see this is the date when they first got infected, when the first coronavirus is transmitting. So it's a -50 days since this is measured from the global pandemic dates published by the WHO. So this is minus 50, minus 45, minus 40. So it's just right from the beginning, the virus spread through Western and Southeast Asia. But and then it's just in just 5 days, it goes to Europe and Northern and Central America, using France and USA as a super spreader. And then just the next 50 days to the Middle East, centered at UAE. And then the next 5 days, the next 30 days, so there's a break here from minus 40 to minus 10. So there's like a 30 days break before and then the infection resume. So and then what happened in each, so like for instance, we stop here in the Europe and then we move here to Europe. This is what happened in Europe. Once the super spreader works, the whole thing becomes exponential transmission. So you can see this is just in 5 days, another 5 days, another 15 days, another 5 days, another 5 days, another 5 days. So it's pacing out from the first super spreader. Same thing goes to US, which is from here to South America. South America took a while before it goes sleeping, but more or less the same thing. Same thing with UEA, with Middle East, from Middle East. And then this one is minus 40 and then to minus 25. So there's a 15 days gap before it then start exponentially growing in 5 days from UEA to Africa. And then this is making the spreading. Now, if we put that on the map, it becomes like this. Like this. Let's go to Europe and then spreading to USA, and then spreading on the northern and central, sending to Brazil, and then from Brazil, and then it spreads. And then this one is international hub, UEA, from China to UEA, and then spreading to Middle East, and then from UEA to Algeria, and then spreading to Africa. So as you can see, it's not actually, there's a pattern to it. And the pattern only follows passenger flights. And we're going to prove that in a while. So anyway, if we conclude that the whole map, the whole map, it becomes like this. It starts from in the middle here, and then the same dates goes to Western Pacific, to the Asian region and Australian region, and then this one goes to Europe, and then goes to North America, and this one goes to Middle East and then Africa. So the spreading goes that way. But if we portray this, of course, the Asia case happened because of close proximity. The whole region is actually in the Pacific region, right? So, and then in the US also, we're talking about the first, among the first transmission happened in Seattle, which is also in the Pacific region. But and then when we talk about the total global transmission, and then it always leads to the advanced economic countries first, to Europe first, to North America first, and not directly to South America. Same thing with this one, from Asia to Middle East first, and then to Africa. Now, further studies. This is a study of the 50 busiest airport by passengers on the 2017 annual report traffic. Now, the whole this is the rank of the airport, how busy they are. This is the country, and then this is there's a ratio one, which is the gaps, the groupings, and then the FDI. 5DI. 5DI stands for the 5 days 5 days intervention. So which means that if we say it happens in second 5DI, means that it happens in the 5 times 2. So it's a 10 days after the first outbreak. So for example, when this outbreak came, and then it goes to US, it just took 5DI, which is only 10 days from the initial break, the initial outbreak. And then it has, in the US, there are this many airports, busiest airport in the world. And then for example, the next one is, for example, this one is UEA. If we focus on the 5DI, it happens only, as you can see, there are 3, 1, 4, 2, 3, 3. So all countries that has an international hub, all happens within just 2 months period, which is just less than 60 days. We're talking about a massive transmission, only with the exception of this one, Amsterdam, which is Netherlands, and then it's Netherlands, Turkey, Indonesia, and Mexico as the only 4 exceptions out of the whole chart of 50 busiest airport. But and then also there is also the early indirect transmission. This one we're talking about the direct transmission because we're talking about transmission through flights, international flights, which can be calculated from the busiest airport. Now this one is the early transmission, but in the countries which doesn't have any busiest 50 busiest airport in the world. So for example, there's a Vietnam, Nepal, and Cambodia and Sri Lanka. But the thing is that if you see the primaries, the 3 are actually like Vietnam is actually sharing physical border with China. So it's in a way they have close proximities, physical close proximity to the source. So, but this is different to the case of Sri Lanka and so on and so forth. So there are only very handful exceptions. So this is like only 1, 2, 3, 4, only 3, 4, only 4 countries exemptions out of 200 countries. Now, if we portray the whole, actually the 50th busiest airport only occupied this area. We're not talking about the spread of globally. So this is just the base of the airport industry, which is also then we're talking about, earlier we're talking about the base of the distribution of the army of the global employment. Now, we move to the last section of this presentation. We're talking about, I'm going to talk about the alpha cities. Now, again, going back to the discussion that we had in the main forum, we have the China-USA new Cold War plus COVID-19 crisis, which might foster changes in the global landscape. What kind of changes are they? Changes of chain of production and distribution, and then also the shift of advanced economy policy from offshore back to onshore operations. We will talk about it lengthy on the first day of the main volume about this. And then there are many examples through it along the way. But anyway, as advanced economies is trying to pull back their industry back to their own geography, from onshore economy to offshore, from onshore operation back to the offshore operation, it happens to foster industrial bounce back because they're lacking of the basic industrial when we have a lockdown scenario, and then it becomes a problem, causing a problem for them to provide basic needs of goods. So this shift happened to foster industrial bounce back and basic economics production sovereignty within the advanced economic countries. Now, this is what's supposed to lead. This has happened because the industrial capitalism shifted from financial capitalism earlier, starting from the 1930s, and then it got encapsulated after the 1970s. But and then, although the major production shifted from real industry to the bubbling finance of fire, which is building the financial capitalism as a whole in the globalization. My comment is that the monetizing services that happen through this change from industrial to financial capitalism happen that it have the monetizing services that made it happen took place on physical realms. Even the fire, even if we say that the fire economy is not physical because it based itself on a bubbling economy, but the employment, the employers that working to encapsulate the economic bubbles actually works on physical realm. Now, this physical realm is the financial centers, which is also sometimes dubbed as the alpha cities. So, which is alpha cities by definition means the financial centers of the world. Now, this is the book, the base foundation book by Saskia Sassen, the Global Cities, but and then the studies was from GAWC, which based on Washington DC, if I'm not mistaken. So they proclaimed this list of they published this list of alpha, beta, gamma, and highly insufficient cities, which becomes the financial centers. But when we talk about global financial centers, then we should only focus on the alpha cities. So this is the alpha cities. We have the alpha plus plus, this is different level. So this is the alpha plus, and then the alpha, and then the alpha minus. So this is the cities. So, but if we portray them on the region, and then we can have this. This is the Americas, Northern and Central and South Americas. And then this is the Australia, this is Asia, this is Middle East, and this is Europe. As you can see, for instance, Asia, there are only two alpha plus plus, one in America and the other one in Europe. And then Asia is dominating on the second class, which is the alpha plus cities, and then also in the middle class, while Europe is dominating at the end, the alpha minus cities. This is suggesting more traditional powers and so on and so forth. Now, what does this mean? This means actually like this. When we try to build a model through it. Let us start with two alpha plus plus. This is New York, this is London. And then we have the different alpha plus. And then we have a different alpha. And now we stop with alpha. I'm not including the alpha minus because the chart then become very confusing. But anyway, there's the interconnection between them. So, and then if we lay over the regions, you can see this is the Asia in the middle, and then this is the Middle East, this is the Australia, this is the America, and then this is the Europe. So this is actually the map of the world. We're talking about the map of the financial centers of the world that's responsible to the development of advanced fire economy or fire bubbling economy. And if we substitute the color, it becomes like this. So basically, the whole system that we're talking about happens only in this. And when we're talking about the super spreader, these are the super spreaders. It's very just very few cities that becomes a very super spreaders. Now, I'm going now to check up on the data. For example, this one. This is the early transmission alpha cities. As you can see, again, we focus on the 5 days in intervals, not intervention, 5 days intervals. Start 0, this one is first, so it just happened in 5 days after the first outbreak in Japan. So first, second, third, fourth. Means that this whole alpha cities that's in this chart transmitting coronavirus in less than 20 days because it's 4 times 5 days. If we expand the graphic to include the whole alpha cities there is in the world, as you can see, again, there's some exceptions, like Vietnam has no alpha cities, Nepal, so it's more or less same with the case of the Obisius airport. And then, but then there's the alpha minus also follows. See the third, fourth. So this is 15 days after break, and then this one 20 days after the outbreak. Third, fourth. Now only exception starting from this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And this one we're talking about the alpha minus. We're disregarding the alpha minus. So we're talking about only seven exception in the course of super spreading of the alpha cities, which actually it's happening like 10 days means 10th of 5 DI means that 10 times 5 is 50 days. So it's still less than 2 months. The whole thing is in conclusion, the whole alpha cities, the whole bunch of alpha cities actually transmitting a coronavirus in less than 2 months. We're talking about the furthest is 12 times 50, which is 12 times 50 is 60, which is more or less 2 months. Now, if we go back to our case studies, because we have 3 case studies, which is China, USA, and Indonesia, as you can see, the ring is actually happening at the very beginning. So in respect, this one, the first 2 tables is talking about the global transmission. Now the last table is talking about the local transmission that is happening within the countries. So in a way that the alpha cities that's got transmitted from overseas and then become a super spreader themselves, and then becomes the first source of virus transmission to their respective countries, with the exception of China, because it begins from Hubei and not from alpha cities. But the rest is pretty much showing the same conclusion. Now, if we put the alpha cities on the map, it becomes like this. This is alpha. I would like to remind back of this. This is the airport, and if we overlay the whole thing, actually they match to each other. So the airports, the transport, and then we're talking about the global financial centers, and then we're talking about the base of the fire economic bubbling, and also the base of coronavirus spreading is actually happening relatively at the same locations. Okay, preparing for the future triple trap. So, as we are now already familiar with the characteristic of the transmission of the virus. We can see that how the virus actually follows a very certain rules when we talk about the super spreader and so on and so forth. And as it happened, the super spreader is actually tagging along with the busiest, of course, first there's the financial centers, the financial hubs, and then with the financial hubs, the alpha cities, and then also the busiest airports in the world, and then which which showed that these centers are actually being hit at the early stage of the pandemic and become the spreader in one case, and then in the other case also encapsulate to become the hardest hit. Some of become the hardest hit by the virus throughout the time. Now, what we've been talking before was about analyzing what had happened. Now, what in regards back to the making connection with the main forum, we need to also prepare for the future. So we're talking about the future of triple trap. So this is, of course, it got nothing to do with the existing the today's virus, but we're talking about for the future virus. How can we? Because the analysis done and presented here was based on the regional plannings and some in the regional plannings and the wider perspective. So how can we respond to this coronavirus or the next virus that may happen it also by utilizing this data and analysis and hypothesis that we have come through so far, also in the sense of using the regional plannings theories. So one of the things that we can do is that we need to to re-engineer our financial centers, which is stopped by our cities. In by definition, the financial centers can even be it's actually even smaller than the city itself. For example, if you're talking about the U.S., the United States, financial centers will be in say New York City, and New York City will be in this say the Wall Street. So we need to engineer these financial centers against the virus outbreak. Now, because when we talk about the modern monetary theory, the MMT, and the delinking process, which might actually be designed to take place on the global financial centers, we might also need to delink the financial centers from the rest of the city, not to each other. So of course, how long will the MMT process will happen? We don't know yet, and will it ever be done, or will it die down along the way? We also don't know yet. But however, when we're talking about the future virus that might come, the problem becomes uh, the problems becomes immediate factors. We need to have an action plan that can be implemented right away. Those kind of things. So, for instance, this is the basic usual ways of city center. So we have see this is the city centers. We have the traditional political centers. So this is the powers of the power centers, the power centric, and then we have the cultural and civic and leisure and so on and so forth, and then we have the CBD, the yellow one, and then we have the inner city development with the inner city livings and so on and so forth, and then the next level of urban development, and then we have the sprawling that goes very wide, very wide. Now, this is most of these financial centers that we've been talking about are designed this way, that they have monocentric, so one core in the middle, and then the rest, and then spreading outwards. Of course, we're talking about there's different generates of design generates between the European style and of agglomeration and then say the North American style of agglomeration, the sprawl based agglomeration against the MRT based agglomeration, finger cities and so on and so forth. But most of the time we can generate the whole thing into this. And then the whole city, then it is on the right hand side, and then on the left hand side we have the airport, the international airport, and then with it the development that's surrounding the international airport, mostly happen through the logistic function, and then we have the railing that connects each other. Now, the idea is that what if we move some of the load of the center city, including its economic basis, the financial center, the central business district, the CBD, closer to the airplane, to the airport, the railing and so on and so forth, along with its development. So because of course there's a CBD, the CBD also needs to be supported by the secondary services and so on and so forth, the foods and any other basic services that follows. Now, in most cases, since the end of 70s or the beginning of the 80s, there's been a growing trends of developing the aeropolis, which is the city that is attaching with a large scale international airport. Now, however, the aeropolis this time, even up to these days, always focuses only on the more or less the logistic agenda of the whole cities, or sometimes even the whole countries. So that's why it's not the heart of the financial centers. Now, if however, on the other way around, the alpha cities had proven that the super spreaders are actually happens to the cities that becomes the financial centers of the world, since it for it be the first stage, which is at the first level, which is the alpha plus plus, and then the second, the third, and the fourth, which is the alpha plus, and then alpha, and then alpha minus. Now the question is that if we want to lock down the financials, the alpha cities, if the questions comes down to the lockdown of the financial centers, the alpha cities, it might prevent the needs to lock down any other cities in the world, because we're talking about we're talking about the history of stopping the whole flights in the world, commercial flights in the world. So if that case happen, if we stop the transmission on any alpha cities, there's a high chance that this super spreader will stop working, which means that we don't need to lock down the other cities, which have the less significance in terms of financial centers. Now, that's the first part. The second part is that instead of locking down the whole New York City, for example, we can just lock down the Wall Street, for example, the Central Business District, or the lower Manhattan. But of course, we cannot do that because the lower Manhattan and the Wall Street, along with all its surrounding areas, is already been like it already become a one holistic layer through the whole Manhattan or the whole New York City. So this will be different if we slowly change and transport the CBD and move it to the international airport of New York. So in this way, the CBD will operate in the close proximity of flying range. If we have the Aeropolis of New York City's of the New York State's international airport, once an outbreak happens, we can lock down just the CBD and along with the airports, without the need to locking down the whole Manhattan, let it be lower Manhattan, Central Park, or the upper Manhattan. So we can just focus on the CBD itself, along with the along with the airports. So in this way, if we can lock down all, the life will still goes on. Business will go, we still goes as usual with using certain health protocols, of course. And then if we manage to lock down the financial centers on itself, we can and then we can disconnect the transmission of the possible transmission of virus from the financial center to the traditional city, which is where the common majority resides. So this have something to do with the fact that the transmission, or the global transmission of the COVID-19 was caused by the health bourgeoisie who has the chance to fly from one center to the others, because it's been proven that it's happened through air travels and so on and so forth. However, it hits the worst case hits the have-nots, proletarians. So by making these two divisions of cities, we are trying to prevent the further transmission of the virus from the airports out to the CBD, out to the larger chunks of the city, which is also, and then larger chunks of the country. Now, if we imply this kind of logics of the urban and regional planning, we can then do the same on the different kind of alpha cities. For example, if these all four are alpha cities, and then the whole four alpha cities are actually interlinked into one one financial system, one financial centers of the whole world through this is through flights. Eh? This is not physically happen, but this physically they are physically apart from each other. But this is by flights. So what happens is that if we have this kind of things, when the new say a new new virus hit, we can just simply close down the whole financial centers. So much so that when the financial centers is actually, you know, the financial centers might still operate in itself in a lower capacity, of course, but it might still operate without causing too much without causing too much prodigy to transmit the outbreak of virus to the core cities of each of the respective uh, financial centers. Hence, I think at the end of the day, these measures will need to be taken. Of course, in a way, in a sense, it might be like you know, it's a big measures for sure, but in the course of this Keynesian MMT, when we're talking about the, you know, even the task of MMT is also it's a large task. Delinking is a very large task, and also we're talking about the end of globalization, the return of offshore industry bounce back to the inshore economy of the advanced economic countries. That's also a large task, but this task becomes in a way necessity to be done because uh, in the presence of such, you know, alarming crisis, such devastating crisis, this task becomes very much needed to be done. So I think it's the same thing with the rearrangement of global financial centers. It's something that we need to be we need something we need to do because at the end of the day, the curve shows that the coronavirus will not be fully combated if it's not really, you know, gone in every countries in the world. So either way, like can see it like it or not, actually we're in it together. And of course, to battle such devastating virus, we need to do also equally large measure. Okay, thank you for the time.